Hi everyone, welcome back to the Hormones in Harmony podcast. Today I've got an extra special guest on. We're talking about something a little bit different, more on the energetic, feminine side of things. I know we're used to the sciencey things, but I'm absolutely so interested in this. And for those who don't know, Cassandra Wilder is a naturopathic doctor and the world's leading expert in women's cycles and menstruation. She travels around the world, leading retreats, seminars and courses to teach women how to take care of their bodies and work with their innate cycles and find balance. She's known for her passion and wisdom in women's wellness and reproductive health. She's a renowned expert in bridging the gap between science and spirituality, which I love. And she's also the CEO of GoddessCeremony and the host of the GoddessCeremony Podcast. So you sound like my type of person, Cassandra, and I'm so excited to chat with you on this episode. But welcome, and why don't you start off by telling us a bit more about who you are and how you got into this speciality of women's health?
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. So like many of us, I didn't grow up feeling connected at all to my cycle, and in fact had a lot of the symptoms that we see most women present today in terms of debilitating menstrual cramps, feeling really disconnected and really seeing zero significance in any of this. So I often joke, if 10 years ago you would have told me that I'd be teaching about this and so passionate about this, I would have never believed you, because my own cycle was so all over the place and so irregular. So it wasn't until I began to get my doctorate in naturopathic medicine and study more about the female body that I started to see more significance in it and began to realize how most of us never receive any form of education on our bodies. And it's very, very challenging, of course, to feel empowered about something when you don't understand it, especially when it's something as simple as your body and something that we're all going to experience every single month. So as I began to study that in more of these scientific approach in naturopathic school, I was also traveling, going to different countries like Guatemala to learn the more spiritual significance of menstruation and why in these cultures it was revered as the most sacred time of the month. And so I totally had my own inner crisis, wondering if this is so sacred, then why are we not taught about it? If this is such a powerful thing, then why is there zero information about it anywhere? And so it really became my passion to start to weave together these two worlds. And then when I graduated and started seeing clients, I was just blown away at the connection between a woman's cycle and her overall level of fulfillment and empowerment. And I really graduated gung-ho to help women on a physical sense, to help them, relieve their cramping or their bloating or regulate their cycle or help them get pregnant. And then it would kind of turn into this emotional counseling session instead, as we were talking about fulfillment and are they happy and do they feel like they have a higher purpose? And that's where I really started to see these two worlds fully intertwined. To be empowered and to have purpose and fulfillment, there is a level of importance in reclaiming our cycle.
Wow, yeah, that's such an amazing story. And I'm also so passionate about women's health because you're right, in most places around the world we're taught that it's the monthly curse, the thing that we should be scared of and hate every month, and it should be the worst week of our month, but it should actually be the most beautiful time. And I know for me personally, when I lost my period a number of times for different reasons, but I've never felt less feminine, and I felt less connected to my body and just felt overall not healthy. And there's obviously biochemical reasons behind that, but I just think you lose a part of yourself, and it is an amazing sign of health. So are there any other signs and indications that women might be having an issue in this area?
Yeah, there's a number of them. So in terms of physical symptoms, debilitating menstrual cramps is one of the biggest ones. And I think that's one that at least tells most women that there is an imbalance, when they're so pain-ridden that they can't even get out of bed. But even if it's irregular, if it's all over the place, if it's super inconsistent, amenorrhea, like you said, or a cessation of menstruation is a massive sign that something is irregular. Infertility, certainly cysts, HPV, or cervical dysplasia, these would all be signs that there is something out of sync in the body and that needs to be addressed. But I also think there's a huge level of importance in talking about emotionally what it feels like to be disconnected. And as I mentioned before, the big words that I hear women say over and over are unfulfilled, depressed, anxious, and without purpose. And so if any of that resonates, then these are certainly things that you want to address.
That is one of the questions that I ask in my intake form with clients. Do you have a meaning of purpose in your life? And I'm so surprised the amount of women who say no, and they seem to have it all. They have the money, they have the relationship, they have the children, the nice house, the holidays, and they're still feeling unfulfilled. So yeah, that's a key factor, and something that most women aren't aware of, that there could be this spiritual, energetic side of things as well. But take one of those things like infertility, for example. How much of that do you think is the nutrition, the lack of sleep, the nutrient deficiencies, as opposed to the lack of self-belief, limiting beliefs, trauma, those types of things?
You know, it's so hard to say. I think in every single woman it presents differently. I've certainly worked with women that have done all the things in terms of all the supplements and the food, and they eat all organic and they're super healthy and they meditate, and, you know, they do everything. They can check off those boxes of what they think they're supposed to do. But under the surface, you know, there's a childhood trauma that they've never begun to reopen, or there's some really intense beliefs that are holding them back. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there are people that have lived generally healthy lives emotionally, but, you know, their cause for infertility may be more so the diet and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. And why do you think it is that us in the Western world it's such a taboo subject with periods? And even when an advertisement for tampons comes on the TV, everyone's like freaking out, like, close your eyes, like, don't look at it. As opposed to other cultures around the world where they see it as a blessing. Why is it so different? And when did that begin?
Oh, it's such a good question. I think we are afraid of what we don't understand. And women have been so disconnected for so many years, for hundreds of years. And this shift really happened when we began to, you know, change from more of a matriarchy to the patriarchy. And to put a woman down, I think the easiest way to disempower a woman is to disempower her from her body. And so if we can teach women that, like you said, they've got the monthly curse, that they're gross, that they're dirty, that this thing is something you don't talk about, it's a really easy way to keep women suppressed. And that's why I think it's so amazing that now we are seeing more of this. And we see these companies, you know, for menstrual cups and period panties like Thinks, and they are boldly sharing their message. And it's beginning to become more of a common topic. Even when I'm in super rural areas in the US, I'm amazed at how many women are now aware of products like this. And that to me is a sign that we're moving in the right place.
Absolutely. It may be a slow progression, but at least we're getting somewhere. And I think it is just people being more open, and podcasts like this, podcasts like yours, just getting that information out there, and it becomes less of a controversial or taboo subject, definitely.
Yes.
And I also see feminine and masculine energy playing into this. I don't know if you see this too, but particularly conditions like PCOS, which I work a lot with, and I have it personally myself. There is the physical and, again, hormonal side of things, where androgens, these male hormones, are elevated. And I always thought, like, is it because I'm too masculine in my mentality, in my lifestyle, like type A personality, go, like intense exercise? Like, do I need to reconnect more with my feminine energy? And after trying some of those things with clients, I did notice a huge difference. Do you see that as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you just touched on something so big, because we live in a hyper masculine world, and we are rewarded when we get super, super masculine. Like you said, go, make it happen, hustle, all these things that we hear about. And it causes us to work against our own bodies, and it causes our hormones to shift. And then things like PCOS or infertility or simply burnout become the norm. And I think we can all think of people in our lives that are going through that, or maybe ourselves.
And how does a woman start to reconnect with some of those things? So if she's been brought up to think that her periods are dirty and something not to talk about, with all of that ingrained in her mind, like, how can you start to move away from that?
It's a process for sure. And when I have women at retreats, sometimes they're really skeptical. They're like, I don't know, Cassandra. I don't know if it's possible for me to really love this thing that I've hated my entire life. So I think simply being open to having your perspective changed is really essential, because we're so ingrained to think that this is gross, that it is painful, that it is taboo. And so if you can simply soften to the idea that maybe there is more to this, that maybe it is possible to experience a cycle and actually feel really empowered by it, that's a really essential first step. And then certainly to give them tools so that they can begin to alleviate most of the painful side effects of their cycle. So if we can get rid of their cramping, if we can get rid of their bloating or their headaches or whatever, then I think it makes it really easy for them to start to celebrate it. So it's a process, but that openness is essential.
Yeah, I think it's hard for them to feel that they love their cycle when they feel like absolute garbage the whole entire time. They feel
exactly
like they can't even leave the bed. It's hard for them to connect with that. So yeah, at least supporting the physical side of things. And with that, take menstrual cramps, for example. What would be your approach nutritionally, maybe supplementally as well, and lifestyle?
Yes, there's a number of ways we can go about it. One of my favorite is to approach it herbally, because herbs tend to work really, really quickly. And I think, as you and I both know, we want to see results quickly, because that's what's going to keep a client or a person committed to the protocol. If they're seeing something happen immediately, they don't want to wait 6 months. It's just the way it is, unfortunately. So red raspberry leaf tea and motherwort are two of my absolute favorites, because those help to release any of the pulsating in the uterus during your cycle. And they also help to infuse your body with good iron, and they help to kind of, you could think of it like a sedative, to relax the body, to release stress, and to decrease the amount of stress that we see in the brain. So those are really, really essential. And then also making sure, again, that they are using products that are not causing more issues. So the average pad or tampon, I know this is kind of a tangent, but it's important.
I don't know.
The average pad or tampon is laced with chemicals that cause a woman to bleed more for a longer amount of time. And it's incredibly, incredibly sinister, the whole sanitary product industry. And we're seeing more and more studies come out showing that you can, trace glyphosate, a chemical that is now being found in pads and tampons. We know that they use xenoestrogens, things that obviously are terrible for your body, and mercury and dioxins. And when we use those, they cause more cramping, because our body is literally trying to push them out and get rid of them. So it increases the amount of contractions, you could say, in the uterus. So generally, if I can get someone on some good herbs, if I can support them in changing that mindset or their perspective just a little bit, and then switch them to a menstrual cup or even just organic pads and tampons, usually within one cycle, they see probably a 75% reduction.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's magic when you see those changes. And I've seen it as well with going from conventional tampons and pads and then upgrading a little bit to the organic, and they've noticed a massive improvement, even with things like UTIs and thrush infections and BV. And then even going further and supporting the environment as well with something like a menstrual cup, so it's less wasteful and usually even more hypoallergenic or less irritating overall. And people are like shocked how much of a difference it makes. And I use a menstrual cup and have for like a good year or two, and I can never go back to a tampon now. So
right?
It's crazy. Yeah, it takes a little bit of getting used to, but they really do save you stress and thinking about it. I don't even notice that I'm on my period when I use a menstrual cup. Better for the planet, saves money, so many benefits with those. Yeah,
so many wins. Yeah.
And then with the herbs as well, so you mentioned 2 herbs. Would that be something that you take month long, or just when symptoms appear, or maybe preventatively? I know
That's
it's different for everyone.
Yeah, I think a great way or a great habit is to take especially red raspberry leaf tea every single day, and to take that, in the evenings or in the mornings or whatever, to weave it into your routine. But just drinking that throughout the month will ensure you have enough iron, and it will already be nourishing your uterus. So when you have your cycle, it'll be far, far less painful. And then motherwort's a nice one to add in during your cycle, especially if you feel like your cycle puts you in bed because it's so painful.
Yeah. And with the red raspberries, most people link that to pregnancy. Like they only think they can drink it in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy, but definitely not the case. It's going to help. I think the term is tonify the uterus and help with the bleed, and then during pregnancy help with the labor. So it has so many benefits. So you can drink it anytime.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what about what's your dietary approach as well?
A high amount of fats. So fat is essential for hormone health. And so unfortunately, the 90s, at least in the US, were
Same
terrible,
here.
right? Okay. We learned that fat was horrible and you must be all carb. And that causes so many hormonal imbalances. So if we can nourish our body with lots of healthy fats like coconut oil and organic butter and olive oil and, avocados, that gives our hormones the building blocks that they need so that they stay in balance. And that way, everything else will be affected.
Yeah. And can you touch on a bit on the omega-3 to omega-6 issue and how that can influence like cramps and the prostaglandins in the body?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is where fish oil is, becomes such a big thing because it is so nutrient dense. And when we're using these high quality fish oils and taking in these high quality fats, they are allowing us to reduce stress in the body. They're allowing us to have more balance in our hormones, and they do amazing things for brain and gut health as well. So essential for every single person to be using something like that.
I agree. And avoiding the rancid, trans fats, inflammatory canola oil, soybean oil, all of those terrible things. And if you're avoiding processed foods, you're already doing a pretty good job at doing that.
Exactly.
But just reading packets, because they hide that stuff in everything these days.
Truly, especially in fast food. Everything's fried in it.
And even restaurants, like they're not going to spend a ton of money on organic coconut oil to cook your meals. So even if you go to a restaurant, they're probably cooking in not great oils, which is sad. But I think the 80-20 rule comes in at that point as well, in my opinion anyway.
Yeah, we're all human. We got to have fun sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. And with menstruation as well, we're really connected to the lunar cycle as women. So women have usually 28 on average day cycle. The lunar or moon cycle is around 28 days. So can you talk about the connection between women and the planet, women and the sun and moon, how it affects us?
Totally. This is one of my favorite things to teach about because we see the lunar phases are typically 29 and a half days, and women's cycle with a 29 and a half day cycle typically as well. And when women ask me, how can these two things be correlated, or what is the connection between them? I say everything about you, from your mood to your hormones to your libido, everything is directly correlated to the lunar phases, whether we're aware of it or not. And so especially when we start to understand the lunar phases, the new moon, full moon, and all the phases in between, it gives us a roadmap to understand ourselves and how we can honor and take care of ourselves. So like we talked about earlier, being in such a hyper masculine world, most of us learn that we have to be productive, go, be super active. And that ultimately, for most of us, will cause depletion, burnout, overwhelm, and that phase where we just throw our arms up in the air and say, well, I don't know what to do. When we look at the moon phases, we see the times to be productive, to be creative, to be really active. And we also see the times when the most productive thing you can do is rest and be still and honor your body. And, maybe to throw out a really popular word, practice self-care. And so when you look at the lunar phases, you truly do have the roadmap for your own healing and your own success in honoring your feminine flow. And if you're not using birth control, what's amazing is simply by having awareness about the lunar cycle, your cycle typically will start to change and come into alignment with the moon phases. So it's, again, something science can't explain, but I think that's what makes it even cooler. There is obviously a massive connection, and just by having that awareness, likely your menstrual cycle will start to link up around the new moon time, which is the time when most cultures around the world would bleed with the new moon.
And I think the theory is as well, we ovulate with the full moon. I don't know if this is just people theorizing what's going on, but the full moon representing romance and love, and that's would be the time that we were out of the cave and we would be able to see our mates in the moonlight, and that's when we'd have sex and have a child. So do you agree with that? Have you heard that as well?
Totally. Yeah. And even today, it's still true. The midwives say more babies are made on a full moon than any other time, and more babies are born on a full moon than any other time.
Interesting.
So there's a big correlation.
Yeah. And I've just noticed your necklace as well. Lovely new moon necklace, which I'm loving.
Yeah. Of course.
Fits in really well. And another thing that can be added with that, with the cycling things in and out, would be seed cycling. I know some people swear by it. It got them pregnant, it got their period back. Some people, it didn't make any difference. It just made them more stressed. Where do you stand with that?
You know, for most people, I do see giant benefits. And yeah, I've seen different theories, but generally it's using one type of seed for 1 week and doing different seeds through the 4 weeks. And I think the big thing I'm noticing is they must be raw and they have to be organic and ideally even sprouted. So I wonder when people aren't seeing success, if, maybe they're using something that's salted or, what's the word I'm looking for? Roasted, yeah. But I have seen huge benefit in that.
Yeah. And the theory behind that is that I think it's flax, and I always get them mixed up, flax and pumpkin for the follicular phase, so for the first half of the cycle to support estrogen creation and detoxification. And then the second half, so the luteal phase, would be sunflower and sesame. I'm sure I've got those right. Forgive me, I'll put some links in the show notes to a blog post, but that second half would support progesterone production. So you're right, some people I know one client, she got really stressed out because I think she had a snack bar and there was sesame seeds in it, but she was in a follicular phase, so she was like, can I eat this or not? I'm like, just eat the bar. She's like, I'm gonna go without any food. I was like, it's gonna help in some ways, but it may not be the thing for you. So if you've tried a lot of things, it may be the cherry on top of the cake, but I doubt it's going to do much if you aren't sleeping, if you're using toxic chemicals. So that may be another reason why people don't see benefit. So
exactly.
And another thing that could be used is, I think we've kind of alluded to this as well, with the cyclical nature of our menstrual cycle with the moon, and times to be more active and productive, times to rest and go more introverted. And there's a term like cycle syncing. Is that what you mean by that? So do you revolve your life around your menstrual cycle? I know some people are very extreme with this and they won't schedule a meeting if they're on their period because they want to be on their own. But I've personally been through a phase and it really works well. And I tend to do this more with my exercise, not really anything else yet, because I have to be productive pretty consistently. It can be hard. But I do it mainly with my exercise now. So when I'm on my period, I just do walking or I do gentle stretching and things. And then as I'm feeling a bit more energetic, my hormones are increasing, I ramp it up a bit more.
Yeah. I love that you're bringing awareness to the exercise, because it's not just work life, it's everything that we can connect to the moon phases. I'm always envious of these people that like completely live with their cycle, where they're like, I know they like go offline for 5 days and like they're completely in it. I mean, I think it sounds amazing, but for most of us, that's just not the reality. And so I think finding a way to honor it in any way, big or small, is crucial. So for a lot of women, I think just having permission to practice self-care and to be gentle with themselves during their menstrual time is revolutionary for them. And like you said, just changing your exercise routine. Maybe on your period, it's not the best thing to go to a CrossFit class, or I don't know, is that an American thing to say?
No, we have it. We've been very influenced by the US. We probably have all of the things that you have. I don't know if that's a good thing.
We've infiltrated everywhere, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it's everything you do. And there is so much wisdom and there is so much healing that happens when we do slow down with our menstrual time or the new moon time and listen to our body and really bring that awareness to what we need in any given moment, down to what we eat, to how we exercise, to what we can carve out to really honor ourselves. Doing that is absolutely life-changing.
Yeah. And could you give us like a sample month? So when someone's on the period, what are some maybe self-care things that they should be doing, what type of exercise, maybe what foods they should focus on throughout all the different phases? Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right. So new moon time, we'll say, is your menstrual time. And I should preface this and say there's nothing wrong with menstruating at any other time of the month. This is just when most cultures did. And for the sake of this example, it just makes it easier. So new moon time, menstrual time, this is when women tend to feel the most introverted, and also when we see this dip in our energy. And that's why when we're on our cycle, we kind of don't want to talk to anyone. And we really just want to be on the couch, right? With a good book and maybe a nice bar of chocolate. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And this is the most important time for us to practice self-care. And self-care is just anything that revitalizes you and nourishes you. So it could be going for a walk. It could be reading a book. I'm all about the hot baths. Those are my favorites. Yeah. And it's just a time for you to be quiet, to be still, to listen to yourself, to set good boundaries. Maybe that means saying no to that work party. Maybe that means saying no to seeing, someone, and instead listening to what you need. Then as we start to move into the waxing moon phase, we start to feel like we're kind of coming out of the cave. It's like a spring-like energy. If we think of the menstrual time as winter, this is when we start to feel like we're coming alive. And this is a beautiful time to start to increase our activity levels. We might start to feel slightly more extroverted, and a really good time to start to plant seeds and intentions for our month. So especially for those of us that are entrepreneurs or have our own businesses, a great time to set your goals and your intentions for the month, knowing that as we move into the full moon time, we'll have more energy and activity. And diet-wise, I think this is a great time to start to add in more healthy fats as well.
Mm-hmm.
Then as we move into the full moon time, this is our big expansive time. And just like if we, imagine the full moon, she is bold and unapologetic. And she doesn't say like, well, I actually don't want anyone to see me today or something. She shows up always consistently. And we feel that too, our most extroverted time of the month and the time when we have the most energy. Our libido is higher. We tend to feel the most sensual. It's a really powerful time of the month. And this is the time of the month to do and be productive and create and make it happen. During the full moon time, this is often when I'm doing 10, 12-hour days, but it feels okay for me because at other times of the month, I'm slowing down. So it's all balanced. And a really, really good time to have follow through with your goals and what you're doing in your life. Then as we move into the waning moon, we start to pull down once again. After our ovulation time, we tend to feel a dip in our energy. And once again, this is a really powerful time to complete and finish tasks. So to get everything complete, everything sorted away so that as we move into the new moon time, we do have that space to really slow down to, maybe ultimately be the kind of person that disappears from the world for 3 days or something, right? That's the goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a great time to start working with your teas and your herbal infusions like the motherwort and the red raspberry leaf to give your body the tools it needs to have a healthy cycle.
Perfect. And with the menstrual week or however long it is as well, I always said that it's normal to feel more introverted and want to rest more. It shouldn't be, any of these things shouldn't be to the extremes. So you shouldn't feel suicidal or like you don't even want to leave the house because your emotions are so all over the place. So I just wanted to put that out there. There should be some natural fluctuations, but it shouldn't be that your mood is completely going up and down the whole month long, or it's making you have time off work or take painkillers for whatever reason. It shouldn't be to those extremes. So yeah, love that explanation though. I love the this connection between the seasons and our female health. That's a great one. And then on the subject of, we've spoken about shame around menstruation, I also wanted to talk a bit more about shame around sexuality, because I think that's a huge one as well. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're bisexual or gay in any way, like just female sexuality. Could you talk a bit more about that? How prevalent do you see it being a problem? And again, how can we start to overcome some of these things?
Yes. Shame is so prevalent in our culture. And, especially in terms of your menstrual cycle, most women didn't have an empowering experience around their first menstrual cycle. I've heard all the stories, like, the day you were always wearing the white pants, that's the day you got your first cycle, or you were at your dad's house and you had to tell him and he was totally grossed out or something. So there's typically a huge amount of shame to our cycle, but it goes so much deeper than that. There is this innate amount of shame and guilt that sadly comes with being a woman anymore in this world. And so many of us are trying to navigate what it means to be empowered and what it means to feel truly at peace in who we are, while not really having a lot of role models or a lot of examples of what that even looks like. So when we see shame in the body, we see physical manifestations typically. And there's a really amazing scale. I wish I could demonstrate it better in this moment, but it talks about like the different range of emotions in the human body, and the ones that are the most healing, and that's, like gratitude and love and appreciation and things like that, and the ones that are the most disruptive to our health. And the two bottom ones are shame and guilt. And I think it just beautifully illustrates how it is so much more than just not feeling good in your body. It is this deep, deep resentment of self that creates these physical manifestations. And so I haven't seen any studies of this, but in my own practice, I've definitely seen a correlation between shame and infertility and shame and PCOS.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. That's a
Yeah.
common one, whether it is for religious reasons, so people have been told that they can't have sex until they get married, or they have health issues or disabilities, or it's just learned beliefs from parents. They tend to be the most common things. And even I've, to some extent, gone through some of these issues myself. I think most people have to some varying degrees as well. Not any sexual trauma or anything like that, which I want to touch on, but just certain beliefs and limiting beliefs, those types of things. And I was just looking then for a book that I really like and recommend on this subject. Would be the Christiane Northrup one, Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom.
So good.
Yeah, that is the Bible.
For
It's
real.
like the thickest book ever, but it's great. I refer back to it all the time.
It's so good.
Yeah, that talks about different conditions like endometriosis and how that can be related to a certain emotion or certain pattern and limiting belief, and same with fertility, like you just mentioned, shame and guilt. That's really important though. So how does someone, are there any resources that you recommend? Would it just be like therapy, talk therapy, acupuncture, like energy medicine to help get those emotions released?
All of the above. Yeah, I do think there's a huge amount of power in speaking what has held us back. And so I think, working with a mental health professional is so vital. And even in the retreats and circles that I've worked with, I do think there is so much power in just speaking our story and being honest and transparent and vulnerable in the experiences we've had, because often we feel like we are alone, like no one will ever understand it. And it's not until we speak it that we realize how common it is. And then we have that support system and that true empathy, because we often will understand exactly what this other person has gone through. So I think that is vital. And I do think there is huge benefits in, the energy medicine, in trauma release therapies. There's a really interesting one called TRE, or trauma release exercise, and that is based on the theory of shaking. And the idea that, when an animal, say, is almost eaten or something, it typically will go and lay down and shake, almost, like vigorously shake.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how, the little deer or whatever is able to process the trauma and then move on with its life. And we even see children do that. When a child or a baby's upset, they shake and they kind of have this thing, and then they move on with their life. And as adults, we learn that that's not okay. We have to be composed. We have to have it all together, right?
Yeah.
And you can't have weakness. And so that's a fascinating therapy as well that I've seen unlock a lot of trauma that we may not even consciously remember.
I've heard of something similar with the eye rapid movement. I forgot the name. It's like DRSA or something like that, where they move the eyes back and forth, and that signals a part of the brain to go into these hidden emotions and the subconscious, or things like tapping, emotional freedom technique. That's another one. So some of these like physical practices, even Reiki can be a good thing. So any imbalances, any emotions, I like to refer to it as dis-ease in the body, can lead to dis-ease. And yeah, Reiki I've been to a few times, and afterwards I would get the worst headache ever. And she told me that I had a blockage in my crown chakra. I had no idea what she was talking about at the time, but afterwards I had the worst headache for like 2 hours, and I never get headaches. So it's like, whoa, that's really done something. And my mum's told me when she was younger, she had Reiki done the one time, and she wasn't due on a period or anything, but after the session was over, she had the heaviest period ever. And she'd only just had a period, so it was like her body was releasing something. So crazy stuff. Yeah,
I love stories like that.
I know. I'm scared to go back. I'm like, oh god, I'm gonna feel terrible afterwards. I need to like take the day off work or something.
Oh, no.
But yeah, I think people, like you said, they narrow in too much on the nutrition and the even herbs. They can be helpful, but people just want to focus on that, and then they don't get to the deep stuff. But this can often have the most benefit a lot of the times.
Exactly.
Yeah. And is there any other, before we move on to just some final few questions, is there anything that we've missed that you want to talk about in terms of periods, menstrual cycles, shame, femininity, anything like that?
I think the biggest thing I would just encourage any woman that is listening to this is to truly be open to seeing the power of your cycle and remembering that when you listen to your cycle, you do have the roadmap to your own healing. And it is possible to have a cycle that you actually enjoy, and it is possible to feel empowered throughout the month, and especially if you are feeling like you are lacking purpose, or if you feel like you have no idea who you are or what you're meant to do in this world. This is the first step in understanding who you are.
Yeah, and I've read from you before, you believe that connecting to your menstrual cycle will transform your life. And again, people will be like, shut up, you've got no idea.
I
You're probably
know.
one of those lucky people without any problems at all. But I'm sure that once they start to work on some of these things, they will realize that it's just a bit of a barrier at the moment, and social conditioning, like we've been speaking about.
Exactly.
So just a few other subjects that I wanted to talk about, your thoughts on things like vaginal steaming, jade or yoni eggs. I've never looked into any of those things personally or tried them, but I know that they can be, again, game changers for a lot of people, and people swear by them. What do you think? Is it like disrupting our body in some way, or is it actually healing and helping us?
It's a great question. When they are used appropriately, they are incredible healing tools. Vaginal steaming is one of my favorite modalities. It's absolutely incredible what is capable of healing when we use high quality herbs and steam. And so if you've never heard of vaginal steaming, essentially all you're doing is making a big pot of tea. So you're using different organic herbs, boiling that, and then putting that on the floor, waiting until the steam has cooled, obviously, and then squatting over that. And you can buy fancy yoni stools and stuff that, allow you to sit, but there's a big hole cut out in the middle. And you sit there for 15 to 30 minutes, and the steam rises up into your vagina and then ultimately likely up into your cervix and womb. And it's one of those modalities that I feel like you don't comprehend how powerful it is until you do it yourself. I just had a session with a client yesterday, and we've been working to heal her cervical dysplasia and her HPV, and our main modality was the steaming, and she just came back clear. And I know that's like a bold statement, and I'm not saying that's the key for everyone, but to me that just continued to reiterate how powerful this really is. And especially with anything cervix related, it is incredible. Certainly there are times when you don't steam. You never ever steam when you're menstruating or pregnant, because that's going to soften the cervix and cause issues. And if you have an IUD, you do have to be really careful. Some women have had them fall out. And if you if you know what an IUD looks like, they got like little claws on them. So it's like not a good thing for it to fall out. No, it's not going to feel good. So steaming is amazing. One of my favorite modalities. And I think it's great for the physical cleansing. And then yoni eggs or jade eggs, I think, are amazing for more of that emotional stuff, for the shame, the trauma, for sexual abuse of any kind. It's really powerful to help us begin to create more of a healing environment in that space. So they're essentially high quality crystals that are inserted into the vagina like you would a tampon. And the muscles inside of your vaginal canal hold it inside of you. And from there, you can do, things similar to Kegels, where you're lifting and dropping your pelvic floor. So it's a really nice thing after birth. If you feel like things are a little loose down there, or a lot of women, even that haven't had children, tend to have weak pelvic floors anymore because we sit, we don't squat, we sit on our butts. And so if you, pee your pants when you do a jumping jack, that is a sign.
You need a yoni egg.
Yeah.
And are these, I'm guessing these are both things that you can just do at home. You don't need to go to like a spa or anything.
Yeah, totally. Okay. Though there are a lot of spas that are starting to do vaginal steaming, but before you go in and, put your health into someone else's hands, do just ask some good questions, because not all spas know what they're doing. They're kind of hopping on an opportunity.
Yeah. And do you know of any of the essential oils that are used? Are there particular herbs that are beneficial? I'm guessing to avoid things like tea tree and some of these more potent ones.
Yes. So that's a key thing you just said. We don't ever use essential oils because they're too caustic in the steam. And so we're using like raw herbs, like you would think of a tea. And some really nice ones that are good for just about everyone are red raspberry leaf, would be mugwort, lavender, chamomile, lemon balm, and these are all that are going to help tone the vaginal canal and also help to, address any bacterial imbalances, any cervical imbalances. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm glad I asked that question. I would have been lifting out the
No.
essential oils.
You'd be like, Cassandra, I burned my vagina.
That wouldn't have been a fun experience. So yeah, I'm glad that question came up. And then just final questions I want to ask a bit more about you personally, just so we can get to know about you. And the first one is, what's one thing that you do every day to stay in hormonal harmony?
Tea is my favorite thing every single day. My big ones are red raspberry leaf and nettle, which is it has every mineral your body could ever need, and milky oats, and those are very high in calcium and magnesium. So those are my favorites, and they help me stay balanced in my cycle. They help me have next to zero cramping when I do bleed, but then also keep me mineralized throughout the month. So I'm a huge tea person.
Great.
And I think any little small opportunity to take care of yourself or practice self-care, I feel like a broken record saying that over and over.
No, people need to hear it.
Yeah, it's so essential. And whether that's just taking a few minutes to put a little more love into your lunch, or drinking that tea, or going for that little walk on your lunch break, whatever little thing you can do to take care of yourself is truly the best routine.
Agreed. And with the tea, do you buy tea bags? Is there a brand that you like, or is it that you buy bulk dried herbs and do it yourself?
I usually do the bulk dried herbs. Just it's more cost effective when you make so much tea, and you can either, just put them into a big mason jar and then strain it after, or if you have a French press, if you're like a coffee person, then that's a super easy way, because you can just press the herbs down and get the tea.
Are there any brands for bulk herbs that people can buy, or tea bag brands if they're just in the supermarket and want to pick something up?
Totally. There's a really great website called Mountain Rose Herbs, and they do all organic. I'm pretty sure they ship worldwide. They're based in the US, but wonderful, wonderful quality herbs. And, you can buy 5 pounds or 10 pounds of whatever you want. It's amazing.
Yeah.
At the store, there's, it's like, what's it called? Herbal Traditions, maybe? Is that the brand?
Oh, Traditional Medicinals.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's a really nice, good organic brand.
Good. And that's, I don't think that's available in the UK or elsewhere. One that's pretty worldwide would be Puka Herbs. I don't know if you've seen that one as well. That is a UK company, but they're expanding a little bit. And yeah, that would be my top 2 recommendation. For herbal teas and organic is really important, especially if you're doing the vaginal steaming. You don't want any pesticide residue anywhere near that area.
Right.
Yeah. And is there a favorite resource, book on the subject of either femininity, sexuality, hormonal health that you want to recommend to the listeners?
So many. Well, if you're wanting to learn more about your cycle, and also how to, understand maybe more of your menstruation as well as your ovulation, or learn how to track your cycle, there's a wonderful book called Taking Charge of Your Fertility. And it's just a good go-to Bible for anything to do with your body. Herbally, anything by Susan Weed is amazing. She is an incredible herbalist, and she does a really great job again of blending the folklore of herbal medicine with the science. So she is wonderful. And one of my favorite books for just understanding the power of the feminine and really starting to reclaim our power and passion and purpose is Women Who Run with the Wolves. Yeah. It is, I think, an essential for any woman.
Yeah, these should all be reading materials in schools, not the tampon talk or the sex ed lessons that we get these days. They're just terrible. So giving every woman a book to read like that, those 3. I've not heard of the herbalist, so I'll have to check her stuff out. I hope it's not like too over my head, all of the names and everything, but I love herbs, so
yeah, I think it would be right up your alley.
Great. And third question is, what's your go-to breakfast? So you're loving your healthy fat, so what do you typically have?
I typically make big veggie scrambles. So like onion and bell pepper and zucchini and maybe some mushrooms, and then maybe some sweet potato or something like that, cooked in coconut oil with lots of good sea salt. Amazing. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. I'm hungry. I'm hungry just listening to that. It's nearly my evening meal time, so I'm working up an appetite right now. And last question, Cassandra, is where can people find more about you online? So tell us about your podcast, your website, Are you on social media? Let us know.
Totally. So if you're interested in learning more about the retreats or the podcast or anything like that, you can go to GoddessCeremony.com, and that's an amazing resource. We do a new blog every single day too. So if you're just curious about anything to do with the divine feminine or your health, it's a cool resource. And then if you want to learn more about my work as a naturopathic doctor, or how I weave together understanding your menstrual cycle and overall levels of fulfillment and empowerment, you can go to CassandraWilder.com. And you can also find both those on Instagram at GoddessCeremony and at Cassandra Wilder ND.
Perfect. And I'm sure people want to go wanting to get in touch with you. And I'm right, you're based in Utah, but do you see patients worldwide?
I do. Yeah.
Oh, great. Perfect. So thank you so much. This has been a great conversation, and again, some of my favorite subjects. So I'm happy that we arranged this and the universe brought us together.
Yes. Thank you so much.